In order for you to take pictures like this, you have to have your camera settings a certain way. You can't record with your images with full color and brightness and basically on automatic mode. You're gonna have to go to manual mode and basically turn off all your saturations, your colors and everything like that. So in other words, if you want a picture like this, it doesn't come out of the camera like this, obviously. Otherwise, everybody would have pictures like this. What you need to do is you need to go to your camera, and as you can see, when you go to your settings and the picture styles, when it comes to your sharpness, every camera is different. Look on your manual for whatever your camera says. This is for a Mark II Canon 5D. That's what I'll be using for this tutorial, but most cameras have their own settings, and they usually come over here flat. If you notice my mouse in the middle of the lanes right here where I'm at, and they usually come standard flat over here. So what we need to do is we need to put it all, sharpness has to go all the way down, contrast has to go all the way down, and saturation has to go all the way down. You can add those things later when you do post, meaning at the end once you're done the pictures and you put them in Photoshop. Then what you do in your color tone, that one stays the same. It stays in the middle. But your saturation, no contrast, and no sharpness. And that's your fundamentals to get pictures taken. So what's going to happen is when you do take your pictures, for them to come out like this, you're going to have to start off in this level. For example, you're going to take your pictures, and when you take them, notice how flat they are. There's no color, there's not much life to it. You do have to underexpose at least 1.5 f-stops from what you're actually supposed to. Sometimes I even go to 2 f-stops below. And if you notice in here on the right, or on the driver fender inside where my mouse is, it looks pretty dark and there's not much detail in there. However, once you do expose it, you can see how you can see all the detail in there. You can see, I'm not going to do it this much, but as an example, it'll bring out things in there that you didn't even know existed. Like you can see the horn in there, lines and all kinds of stuff in there that you didn't see. Of course, all this is going to get burned out in the middle where the engine is and all that. So in order for us to just focus on what we're trying to do is we're going to put the back to default. So there we go. So if you can see, it's pretty dark. The main thing we want to do is here in this levels on the bottom on the right and vibrance. You can go up to like 41, for example, and you notice the color starting to come out, and some detail in here as well on the driver fender inside. Then you do saturation. If you do saturation, you put too much color. Like if you look at the sky here in the fender on the driver's side, you'll see how the sky is light blue. But as you add saturation, the sky turns into a ridiculous blue. And if you notice on the battery also on the front left of the picture, you'll see that the battery's pretty dull. With the saturation on the bottom right of your levels, you see me moving it. You can see how bright the battery gets. And that's because we basically took the picture with no colors, which means you have full control of how much color you want to. If the camera records those colors for you, you won't be able to do this clear. So I usually like, depending on what your taste is. And then of course clarity, it can make it look fuzzy and dreamy. And if you go all the way to the right, you can see that it almost looks like a cartoon. If you look at the kid over here on the top right hand side, you'll see the kid's legs, the shirt. And as I change this clarity right here on the bottom right, you'll notice how everything gets out of way proportion. And one thing you do got to watch out is up here on the top, you'll see levels. Don't go past them where they start peaking. So basically right there I'm pushing it, but it's all in your taste. And that's an example of how to do HDR. And once you do that, then you click open image, and that's how you get those type of images. And if you want to see it compared to the original, then all we would have to do is 8264, and we'll have the original JPEG which matches it. So with this, you can see let me put this down. With this JPEG, you can clearly see the difference in the way the color was with no saturation, no sharpness, and all that. And this is what happens after you do, the clarity, saturation, and sharpness. It brings it to life. That's the only trick. So there's not much to it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll show you a part 2, which makes it much better. Well, if you want to go to part 2, why turn it off? Let's begin part 2. So we don't need this picture no more. Delete, save changes, no. Okay, so what we want, for example, is we want to get, say for example, we'll minimize Photoshop, and we'll use, I guess we'll use this copy. There we go. So this is the copy that we will be using, but that's already the image, so we don't need that. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try, for example, let's try this one, the one that I did over here. This one's a little more complex. This is level 2. If you notice here on the right, I have a bunch of layers. Obviously, it's my logo first, and those are different layers. And if you notice, I can start removing different layers that I added, and basically that's what the picture looks like. So I added this extra layers to basically color it in. Look at the tree on the left of the picture, and look at the right side. I'm turning off the layer number 4, which is this one right here. And as I turn on layer on and off, you'll notice that it changes. As I turn it off and turn off layer 2, the sky, look at the sky spots under the bridge. See how they change? If you want to take pictures of the cars and make them come out clear, you're going to have to give it a lot of light, which means you're going to burn out the sky. So one way to do this type of work is, for example, this is 8276. Let's go to the original and work from that. 8276. 8276. Here we go. Here's the original. And this is what the picture looks like. Actually, let me set it all to 0. Let me do it all to 0 and we'll start from scratch. Default. That's what the picture looks like originally when I took it. Everything was at 0, and I mean everything. There was no sharpness. And the reason why I tell you to underexpose is because if you notice this, if you were to show this picture and tell somebody, hey, look at the picture that I took, they're gonna be like, oh, you can't even see nothing. The sky is so white and the grass looks burnt. It don't even look green, and you can't even see the color inside the trunks of the cars. It's really dark in there. The trees are ugly. It just looks like a gloomy day. And so but this is what happens when you take a picture with no saturation, no sharpness, and obviously, just plain blank. So nobody's going to be considered a good photographer for taking pictures like this, but this is what you actually have to do. And if you notice under the bridge is really dark. You can't even see what's under the bridge. So the first thing that we want to do is we are going to have to open it up in layers and do different layers so we can get each piece by itself. So the first thing we want to do is work on the sky. In order for us to work on the sky, we have to adjust the temperature. And the temperature here gives us what color we want. But because the sky is overexposed, we're going to start with the exposure, and we're going to drop the exposure. As we drop the exposure, you can see that the clouds are starting to have life. So now that looks like a decent detail in the clouds. The original, you can't see no clouds, it just looks white. But as you drop the exposure, you're able to see the original clouds in order. I mean, you can get them down to good detail. And then the next thing we're going to do is we could mess with the temperature here to give it some sort of blue. The temperature, we can make them yellow, or give them a decent blue, not an outrageous blue. And then up here on the settings, we can click on grayscale. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the blue come out a little bit. So if you notice here on the blue tint, I'm giving it ridiculous amount of blue. So let's give it some sort of nicer blue, just 33. And then we go to hue, which is luminance, saturation, and hue. They're right above it. I don't know if you can see the mouse moving. I'll let you look for it on the right side where the settings are at. So we go to hue, and we also add a little more blue. See, that turns it purple, and you can basically get the color you want in the sky. Just mess with it till it looks more natural, but vibrant. So boom, that's our first thing. So once we do that, we open the image. Once we open the image, what we're going to do is, that's it, we have it there. So that's our first one. Then we open it again, and now we already got the sky. We don't need to worry about that. So let's bring that everything back to default. Let's go back to the main settings and take off the blue. Now we have everything flat. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring out the blues. Look at the color on the cars. You see how they change purple and all the weird colors? That's because we're using the blues. But before we do this, we're going to focus on the first one, the basics. We're going to work our way up. First, we're going to go with clarity. And if you do too much clarity, see, it already looks like a cartoon. So we won't go too crazy. Well, let's say 48. Vibrance, we can go, 38. Saturation, 28. And now we worry about our blacks. We don't care about the sky or anything else above it. We're just focusing on the inside of the trunks of the cars. We want to make sure that, we have decent detail inside the trunks. So the whites don't affect it too much. Shadows should make a big difference. See, now you can see everything inside the trunks with the shadows. So we adjust the shadows. We're just focusing on trunks. And now we're going to focus on highlights just to make sure we have all the detail we want. So there's the highlights. And then contrast makes it dark and fuzzy weird. So we'll try to keep that at 0. That was already nice exposed. And exposure, we don't really have to go up. We can leave the exposure basically at the same color. So now again, our focus is the cars and inside the trunk. So now we can go to our hue and make our blues bluer. Basically, we want them to pop and make them. Look at the turquoise 57 Chevy. This one only handles the aquas, and that's why the Chevy's the only one that's changing, nothing else. So we want the Chevy. That's pretty decent right there. The green, look at the green in the grass. See, the green does the grass. And you don't have to go outrageous on the green, but we'll leave that there for now. And what we can do is go to the saturation, and we can add green, and that just makes the green a little more greener. So you can mess with these colors. Like I said, our main focus is not the grass. Don't get carried away. We're doing different layers. So our goal is, once we do that, is vibrance. We can do it where it's almost outrageous. And okay, so we got the cars going. So the first one was the sky, and now we got the cars, and that's layer 2. And now we go back to the layer again, and we open it up. And now if you look under the bridge looks pretty nasty. Like, it looks grainy. Even though I shot it at ISO 100, here we want to make sure that we don't get that crazy. See how under the bridge it looks like just really burnt out. So we want to give it some contrast just to darken it up. Give it some detail, but get rid of that, the grain look. So the third one that we have is the bridge. The bridge looks good. Let's make it a little darker. There we go. And there we go. See, so now we have the bridge that's looking good. And that's pretty much it. So we can, now since we're working on the bridge, we can go to the colors again. And right here, the edges of the bridge are like orange, which means reds. You can see the reds changing on the bridge to give it a little more life. And since we made the cars pop, now we got to make that bridge kind of pop, the reds on the bridges. So there we go. So the trees, if you look at the trees are looking pretty nice. They look a little too cartoony, but it's okay. It's supposed to be, you know, fantasy style. So now we got the bridge going. So we had the sky, and then the cars, and now the bridge. So now that we have everything in place, what we're gonna do is we're gonna duplicate the layer. Actually, I don't want to make it confused. Oh yeah, we'll duplicate the layer. Duplicate the layer for the bridge, and then we're gonna turn off the original background. Now once that's done, we're gonna go to the eraser and basically erase everything. Oh, we'll use a small, that's fine. See, we're erasing too much of the bridge, so we're gonna have to make the brush a little smaller. That's too little. That's about 1,000 is good. So we erase the bridge where you can barely erase the edges of the bridge. The rest has to be, actually, you know what, I like the trees in this setting, so what we're gonna do is we're basically gonna erase the sky off of this. We're gonna erase the sky off of this. There's that section of the sky erased. There we go. Keep the bridge. Try not to erase too much of the bridge. And on your brush, one thing that you gotta consider is this. I have it on 1,000 pixels, but the hardness is at 0. If I do it here at 100%, you're just gonna get a spots, and you can't be smooth about it. So you don't want that. You want the brush to be at hardness, at basically soft. So since we're keeping the bridge, we can erase, oh no, we can't erase that bridge right there. We'll erase just the cars, leave that bridge there, and we'll erase the cars. We'll save that tree. We'll try and save the trees since those are the ones that we're gonna keep with the bridge. So this layer is for the trees and for the bridge. That's it, the trees and the bridge. Everything else gets erased. Only the trees and the bridge. We erase the skies, and now we don't have anything. Now we have one layer where it's just trees and the bridge. So now that we have that layer, we select Control A or select all, and then we copy it. Or Control C for copy. Then we go to the original one. We go to the original one and we paste V, Control V. Now we added the sky and we added the bridge. But look at the cars. The cars are still really nasty. So then, since we already got the sky and the bridge, now we go to the cars. On this layer again, what we do is we right click, duplicate layer, click OK, and then remove the background original. Make sure your background copy is selected. And now what we're going to do is we are going to delete the bridge and the sky and the trees, and we're only going to keep the cars. So we try to keep the cars, and we erase everything else around them. We even erase the grass. There we go. It doesn't have to be that perfect, but try not to erase the cars too much. Just a little bit edgy is fine. So now we have the cars. So now Control A, select all, Control copy. Then we go back to your original layer, and then you paste it. And now we have the cars. And now the next thing we do is the grass. So we go back to the original layer, click enter, and there's the original. So now our focus is going to be on the grass. So we go to our colors, put the greens, make the green kind of pop out. Then we go to hue, make the green really stand out. Then we go to luminance. Then we make the green. You see how it illuminates the greens even on the trees. So there we go. So now we keep the green. So now we're going to erase everything we see except for the green, and we click open image. So now that we're here, we are on the eraser, and we erase everything but the greens, which means this tree right here we keep. The cars we delete. All that we delete. We delete the cars. We leave no cars. We'll leave that tree right there. That guy's probably going to stay there a little bit, which is not too bad. We erase the top of the car, everything that we can, And obviously we're going to erase. That tree's not too dark, so I said we erase everything but the trees. So everything else goes, sky, all that stuff goes. We keep the trees, we just keep the green stuff. There we go. And so now we have greens that we kept. We erase that tower. There we go. So now that we have that, we erase part of that bridge. There we go. We can erase a little more of this guy, that tent too. Okay, now we have nothing but greens. And what we do is Control A, Control Copy. We go back to the original, which is this one, and then we paste the green layer on it. But one thing I forgot to do is duplicate the layer. So as you can see, Control Alt Z, it doesn't work because we basically colored it white. What we need to do is we need to duplicate. Right click, duplicate layer, click OK, and remove the background layer. Click eraser, erase everything. You have to see those little squares in the background so that way you know that you did duplicate it and not waste time like I just did. So you go around everything, you keep the greens, erase everything but the green, erase all these cars. There you go, erase the bumper, this guy's head, just leave the partial, the green, whatever you can. Everything else gets erased. And make sure any dark spots resemble that there's still stuff behind it. We got the green. And now that we do that, Control A, Control Copy. And you go to the main layer, which this is not the one we wanted. We delete it. And then we paste that new layer of green. See, I did something wrong here again. Control Alt Z. What am I doing wrong here? I selected that layer. It's clear. Control A, Control Copy. Go to the main layer, Control and Control V. There we go. That's what we needed. But if you look at the sky looks a little weird. And what I want to see is what exactly. See? So we gotta erase, basically. If you don't erase everything on it except for the green, it looks kind of awkward. But you get the idea. If this one is the one that's looking white, there, that's the white. That's the one that's causing the white. So what we have to do is get to this piece and start removing the white sections. But if you do the bridge, then you obviously damage the bridge. So you don't want to do that. But that's how you get that picture. And ultimately, when it's all said and done, this is what the picture looks like when you take a little more time. So I hope this long tutorial helps you on how to make HDR pictures.